What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we got 4 winning deck lists to go over from set champions this past week, and we'll do this once, maybe twice a week. I kind of scope through them. We can pick some more meta decks or try to stay on these more slightly less common ones. Let me know down below what type of decks would you like to see, and I'll see if we can't see if somebody won for it as right. Do ya see what we did there? Okay, I'm sorry if you unsubscribed for that really bad joke. Without further ado, our first deck is, obviously you see it already, SteelFasa. This is a deck that I put up a video right before set championships, and I said watch out for this deck. This deck is actually pretty good. In our recorded tops, link to the spreadsheet down below where we count events of 25 or more players, SteelFasa did win 2 events. In addition to that, just checking out the under 25 player ones, the deck was pretty well represented. So, just saying. Anyway, you see Cinderella and Daisy Duck on your 1-drop. Cinderella making sense because those 3-cost songs are just too strong, especially when you're setting that early tempo for the deck. And you can just sing them with your 1-drop, and then you come back with like your 1s, your 2s, you protect your board. It's just insane the advantage she can generate you. Daisy, obviously, we're playing a Mufasa deck and having a multi-quester as a 1-drop, which means if you hit it late game, it's also not a bad card to hit then. So it just fits and works really well. 3 piglets. Obviously, if you've got multiple characters on board, you get to quest for 3 dock. Just kind of draw power. It is something that the deck does lack in. You have the Let the Storm Rage ons and the Rapunzels, but outside of that, you got the dock as your essential draw engine. 4 Mr. Smeeze, rounding out our 2-drops. Again, it's just a multi-quester that has a crazy good stat line, and it pairs up with Rapunzel really nicely to net you some draws and lore in the process. Doc. Not only does he let you get to your other characters earlier, he is a multi-quester. Do you see the theme here? Well, the next card, let you guess. What does he do? He quests for 2. Lawrence, when he's not damaged, he also gets the 4 strength, which, lo and behold, 4 willpower, also pairs up with Rapunzel very nicely for that draw engine. In addition to that, he just trades with so many characters. You have to like throw a fox into it, crash a small character into it first, and then trade a better character just to protect it. So either they're crashing multiple characters into it or they're losing a good card. Overall, Lawrence just applies a lot of pressure to your opponent. 4 Pete's, because when you start to get towards B prep, you don't want to lose to it. 4 Rapunzels, because she is the draw engine of your deck. Then we have 3 Plutos as just another card, kind of like Lawrence, that benefits from not being damaged. But when he is damaged, 5 willpower, Rapunzel. Mufasa, the name of the deck. Obviously, you're going to go ahead and play 4 of him. The Chen pose are interesting, but I understand it. The nice big body, the bodyguard, the 7 willpower, the 4 strength. Crazy good stat line, and it makes it where your opponent probably isn't getting to your characters unless they have a board wipe. Gantu, this card is insane. Questing for 4. It was almost the perfect scenario. I was testing this deck with a friend yesterday, 2 nights ago at the time you're seeing this, and it was the dream scenario. I'm at 16 with Mufasa on board and he B-preps me. But we did not hit the Gantu because, well, that's just like I said, the dream scenario. You get to 16 versus Ruby. They hit you with the B prep. Your Mufasa hits a Gantu, and they just say, well, I lost because you have a 4 quester on board at 16 lore. Again, I'm going to do it at least once. It's going to happen. 3 Perdita. I said Perdita was a good card. I said as if I'm claiming to be the one who first found out about her. Yeah. No. Perdita's been in and out of formats for a while. But I'm saying in my video last Friday, I said Perdita is a very strong card and don't sleep on her. Expect to see her making her way into more of these SteelFasa lists. And she's still not in all of them, but she is popping up more and more. And just her being able to come back, not just for piglets, but for daisies, for docks, for that draw engine, bringing back Smee. Perdita just generates quite a bit of advantage, and it's another one of those cards where if they B-prep your Mufasa, your board, and you hit a Perdita, and now Perdita brings back like a piglet or a daisy or, you know, a Smee, all of a sudden you're questing for 4, possibly 5, assuming you draw into a character that you can play, and you're just questing for 5 and probably closing out that game. 4 Cinderellas here, the shift line, and just hitting her late game is very strong. Then in the songs, we're also playing the long game Zeus, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. 11's a little higher than I'd probably want to run in a Mufasa deck. Overall thoughts, if you see the video, deck player, sorry I didn't grab names when I took the decks down. Feel free to comment down below, let me know. But I don't know if I like the 11 songs. I really like Zeus as a card this format, so I'm going to accept it and be okay with it. But in this type of deck, I feel like 8 to 10, like I'd want to stay closer to 8 or lower. Also, you're not getting the added benefit of your Cinderella being able to sing this. Like if you look at the cards who can sing this outside of Pluto and Shen Po, your other cards are a little more valuable in progressing your game state than singing the Zeus usually. It's just an odd card, I guess, to have in this deck personally, but I guess I get it. So 4 daisies, 3 docks, that's 7. Then we got what? 3 Perditas is 10, 14, 17 uninkables. It would bring you down to 14 uninkables if you took it out as well. Could cut 1 Perdita even. Now you're down to 13 uninkables. And do what? I'd like a 3rd Gantu in there. Even a 4th dock if you're running the 4 Cinderellas, the big one, because if you miss the shift line, being able to just get her out a little cheaper. Could go back to 14 uninkables and add the other dock for the draw engine potentially. There's a few little things I'd shift around, but overall I think it's a pretty solid list. And we'll go ahead and move on into the next deck we're going to talk about. And of course it's going to be Blurple. Why wouldn't it be? This deck is crazy. So in our 1-drop spot, we're playing 10 of them, 4 Chernobygs, 3 Diablo, 3 Brooms. 10's kind of the standard number, whether it's 4-4-2, 4-3-3s. Different ratios, but for the most part, that's a pretty common thing. I went against the grain and I only played 8 in mine. I went 4 Chernobog, 4 Broom, but 10 is the more common number, and Diablo usually being that other card. Sometimes Rafiki is put in there. On turn 2, the Tipo and the Snakes, and then if you look at the actions, also the Sail the Azurite Sea. That's all kind of just the standard bread and butter, the 4-4-4 ratios there. If you go into the 3s, the Fox and Crab are really the only characters you're probably going to see in Blurple on 3, and maxing out on both. Usually Crab sometimes comes in as a 2 or a 3 of. I personally think 4 is almost mandatory. It's just such a great card in here, and it's inkable if you have to ink it. 4 Friends also is going to be standard. I did see a list that only played 1. I don't agree with that. I agree with 4, but I mean, I guess the deck does generate a lot of advantage. We see them playing the 1 library too. We'll transition right into the 4 drops. So 1 library and 2 McDuck Manors. I also put a location in for Sunday after Saturday. I just felt like it was a change I wanted to make. I went with Castle though, because I say it so many times. Like, I've never been like, library won me that game. I will say though, especially with your ramping, you get your characters here. Like turn 3, you have 4 ink, you play your library, you move your followers here, and you quest with it. You pop your followers, you draw 2 cards. Like, that is a really good tempo swing or advantage play. That's a really good resource management. So I'm not going to knock on library as much, because by turn 3 you can actually start getting that benefit from it in Blurple, and obviously you're playing a bunch of cards that just generate that advantage. So I don't want to knock on library. I think library is better in this deck than I usually like it in my decks, but I don't know. I played Castle, and Castle straight up won me like 4 games. Like, the card was so crazy. It applied so much early pressure. And the difference between Castle and McDuck Manor, obviously your McDuck Manor has 9 willpower, which means it's much harder to take out in 1 turn. That is actually very, very valuable. So it's going to probably generate you more lore. In addition to that, they, outside of lore, have not as much of an urgency to take it out if they have a plan. Sometimes that they don't have that plan. With Castle, what I really liked about it is as you're moving characters there, you're really pushing them to answer it. Either they have to remove the characters to stop you from drawing too many cards, or they have to be able to remove the castle. And if they can't remove the castle yet, they go after your characters, which means your castle keeps living and living and living, and you keep moving characters there. And I felt like that decision between making them choose, are they going after the characters, are they going after the castle, and then you start slowing them down with Hades, Elsa's, things like that, disrupting their tempo. I felt like Castle was the best option out of the three. Like I said, McDuck Manor probably would generate you just more lore because of the extra willpower, but it's not quite as immediate, you must answer this threat kind of card that Castle can pose when you have two characters at Castle. Like if you have two characters there, if they don't answer that for a couple turns, it's game over. You're just going to win. Other 4-cost characters, we see the genie, the goat, and the rabbit, the 4/4/3. That's very standard in almost all Blurple lists. Mine, again, slightly different. I went with the 2 rabbits, but I'm also playing Castle as that card advantage play too, so kind of changes other things up a little bit. 2 Bells, 4 Elsas, and 2 Donald Ducks. Bell is crazy good. I use 2 to 3 of them very frequently. I personally like 3, but again, if you're playing these ratios, it's pretty strong there. We look at the Hades Elsas. Again, it's another preference call. I prefer the Elsa, so I play 2 Hades, 3 Elsa, but Hades costs 1 less, and it actually removes the threat, whereas it instead of just freezing it. So again, there are no quarrels with their choicing. And then the 2 Finders Keepers. Personally, I don't like the card. I think other cards draw you enough and do enough for you where they don't just take the turn. It's an action. It's not a song. It's not a character. It just draws you the cards. It doesn't really do anything to your board state, and I think it's kind of slow. I'm not a big fan of the card personally. That's really my only thing I would suggest on this deck is I don't like Finders Keepers in the deck. Quite a few other players do like it, though. I'm going to be transparent. I don't like it, but quite a few other players do, and they have been topping with it. So it's by no means a bad card. I'm just not a huge personal fan of it. I would take it out, add in one more Bell, and shoot, I don't even know what other cards I'm missing from my list that are on here. Pull the 2 Finders Keepers, put in a Bell and like a 4th Broom maybe, just right off the top. I'd have to sit down and look. And again, I'm playing 3 Queen's Castles over those 3 locations. But again, I don't think that this list is really solid. I completely understand and see why he won his event. I came very close myself, and I have multiple friends who also took first place finishes with Blurple. I think it's just an incredible deck right now, and it's easily tier 1. Another deck we're going to go over. Thought I had a water here somewhere. Blue Steel is back. The control version has been topping as well, but the aggro version is actually popping up quite a bit, and it's kind of scary. Shout out Andy from the group chat. He was actually playing this at our set championship, and we played against it, and it was a really back and forth close game. 4 Mickeys, 4 Robin Hoods on turn 1. Mickey, obviously, with that 2 willpower resist 1, is kind of annoying to try to deal with in those early turns. Like low-key, he's annoying to deal with there. And obviously Robin Hood setting up your shift lines. Calhoun, Doc, Smee all on 2. So Smee's obviously your aggressive card. Calhoun is your answer to your opponent's aggressive cards. And Doc is that draw power. So a lot of utility in this 2 spot, depending on if you're on the play, on the draw, in that mid to late game, which one you would rather go for. Again, Doc, less important early on because you don't want to get rid of your hand. Smee if you're on the play, Calhoun on the draw, just depending on what decks you're also against. Smee all the time versus Popsicle, Calhoun probably into like Amber Amethyst, hyper aggro style decks. On 3 then, Alice. She is crazy, giving the ward and the extra lore to one of your characters after she quests, and she quests for 2 herself, 4 willpower, and has ward. Obviously, versus like a Amethyst deck, they're going to be able to answer her with like a Fox. But outside of that, she can be very strong, especially if you like come back with a Pluto on the following turn. She can do a lot of damage to you. 3 John Silvers then, just stopping your opponent from challenging with the character. He's been seeing his place pop up more and more in quite a few different meta decks. 4 Pete's, because again, be prep, you don't want to lose to it. 4 McDucks. He's pretty good. Who would have ever thought a 5/5 2-quester would be pretty strong? Thank goodness he's uninkable, because 5/5 questing for 2, that's a problem to deal with. Then you have those 4 Plutos, like I said. So ideally, if you're on the play with this deck, you want to hit like Mickey, Smee, Alice, Pluto, and you're going to be set up in a great spot. You hit Mickey, you quest for the 1, you get a Smee down. Now all of a sudden you're questing for 3 up to 4. Then you get your Alice down on 3. That's when you quest to the 4. Then you get Pluto down, exerted, because he's a bodyguard, and then Alice quests, also boosting. So then you get 6 more. So on turn 4, you go all the way up to 10. Threatening 17 next turn with the 5/5 bodyguard. Like, you just go so fast and into such a power play. And in addition to that, you're threatening the 17, but then say you come down with a Baymax on turn 5, you heal 2 from the Pluto when they challenge it, you get that 2 lore. Now all of a sudden you're at 19 into turn 5, even if they answered some of your other cards. So the deck can be very, very insanely quick. And as it starts to go into that grind game, you have the Baymax for the instantaneous lore. You have the Cogsworth to just start giving you that resist, which is going to add up and help your characters stick around and last longer. Tragic Hero Beast popping up in yet another deck. Card's pretty good. Who would have ever thought? Just the 2 of a little bit of card advantage. Resources, it basically says answer this or I'm going to win the game. And then you have the Gantu as well, just pushing into that mid-late game where it's like, I'm just going to start slapping these cards down, and if you don't answer them in one turn, I'm winning the game on my next turn. And it's just card after card after card that does it. Baymax, Cogsworth, Beast, Gantu, Robin Hood. All these cards are just insanely strong in that mid-game, closing it out. A couple Babooms in there to deal with your opponent's early board to just establish yourself too. Baboom can be huge into those Amethyst decks, because when you have your Alice and you quest with her on 4, if you don't have your Pluto, and say they only have the 1 character because they're popping them to get their draw effects off, you can Baboom 1. If you get it off the board, now you just made it much harder for them to play a Fox play, because they better have like a 1-drop to play it, bounce it, play the Fox. And if not, well, then you're going to be in a pretty good spot. 3 Strength of the Raging Fire, just a little bit of removal to help protect your board as you develop it, and the McDuck Manor as well, just so you can kind of focus on 2 different fronts. You set up that play with your characters, and then you also can slap Manor down. It's like, hey, now start dealing with my characters, but also I have a McDuck Manor over there. Oh, be prep. Okay, well, you dumped everything into getting rid of my board, and McDuck Manor's just going to close it out for me now. So if you hit like Mickey, Smee, Alice, Pluto, and then slap down McDuck Manor, the next turn it's game over. There's not a deck coming back from something like that. That's just dream hand, everything going great for you. And that leaves one more deck we're going to talk about today. Again, congratulations to all 4 of these players. Anyone playing any of these decks? How is it going? How did your set championships go? What are you doing this weekend? Okay, Amber Steel Aggro. This is essentially Dwarf Mine without the mine. This is Dwarf Mine Pride Lands without the Pride Lands, and it's not the other one where it's Amber Steel that we kind of talked about the other day, where there's not the Cinderellas in there, there's not the Calhouns, and there's just Amber Steel Hyper Aggro. This one does still take advantage of Cinderella. We talked about it with the SteelFasa deck. Cinderella with those 3 singing songs is just insanely strong for tempo. It's insanely strong for these aggressive decks, and it just generates you so much advantage. Also, the Daisies in there. We just talked about with the Blue Steel list how Mickey can be problematic to deal with, which means he might only quest for 1 lore each turn, but if he sticks around enough turns, that 1 lore adds up over time. The Simba also is another card that just allows you to fix your hand early on. It's not a true plus, unless, in a way, you play it, you draw a card, and you discard a Lilo Escape Artist, because now you can bring her back at any given point on a future turn, but just by paying 2 ink at the start of your turn. So she is an insanely strong discard target for that Simba. Then you have your 4 Lilos, obviously, 4 Piglets, 3 Calhouns, 4 Docs, and 4 Smees. So most of this deck is in that 1 to 2 cost spot. Again, being very, very aggressive here and just putting it on your opponent to have to answer you quickly. The Calhoun is one of your ways to help play on the draw instead and play into other quicker decks, or even just slower decks, get some lore while protecting your board state. 3 Baloos, because, well, lo and behold, getting 2 lore when they remove them is still strong. We've talked about the power of Lawrence already. Pete, Yep, Pete's still Pete. Doesn't matter what deck you put him in. Pete's there for what Pete is there for. Rapunzel healing your Lawrences, healing your Smees. Just does really good into those types of things. And you also have Sven, where, for those who don't know, he readies a character. And obviously, readying your character means your opponent can't take it out. So Sven in there as a 4-cost inkable 3/3 body that quests for 2. So pretty good stat lines with a solid effect. And then the 4 Kitas. Kita essentially says, unless you have a rush character, we're going to just both take a whole turn off of attacking, and I'm going to get my board back next turn. I'm going to quest freely this turn. Unless you have a rush character or a board wipe, I'm going to quest next turn, and I'm probably going to win that game at that point. Kita is insanely strong when she comes down in that mid to late game. Overall, I think... Oh, the blue steel list, by the way, I really, really liked it. I'd have to play it a bit more to critique a whole lot. Just right off the top, the 2 tragic heroes I probably would take out. That just seems a little bit odd. I get why they're there. I don't think they necessarily are needed. I'd take out the 2 tragic heroes. What would I just really quickly put them in for? Maybe a 4th Strength of the Raging Fire and a 3rd Baymax without testing more. Just my overall thoughts on that deck. I don't know how I feel about the tragic hero, like I said, especially as a 2 of. It's an insanely strong card, and if you have it and you want to play it, absolutely. It's a card I'm never going to say don't put it in your deck. It's always going to be a good card. This deck, what would I change? What would I change? I've played the Dwarf Mine version a decent bit, and it seems like it just runs out of gas sometimes, and sometimes you get tunnel visioned in trying to get your location down, and when do I play the location? When do I move there? I drew the location late game. Now I'm probably going to lose. So not having it in there, I'm actually pretty well okay with. I like the Simba a lot, too, just because you can get that extra advantage from like the Lilo, fixing your hand, too, in the early. So 4 Rapunzel, 4 Docs, 4 Storms for your consistency cards. What would I like to see different potentially? How many uninkables do we got? We got 4 Daisies, 3, 4, so that's 11, 14, 18. We're already pretty high in the uninkable count, so I was just thinking like the Tinkerbell that essentially is Ariel, but for characters is just another card. But I would not want to bring the uninkable count up any higher than we already are at 18. Just because of how I am with my uninkables, I would potentially pull out the Baloo's and put in the Donald, because he still gets you one of those 2 lore points when he's played. He gets the extra lore, so whereas Baloo gets it when he leaves, Donald, you get it right when he's played. So Donald's more guaranteed in case they like Hades your Baloo or bounce it back to your hand, something like that. Whereas Donald's just immediate no matter what. It's just the 1 less, but he's got a little bit better stat line with the 2/3 inkable instead of the 0/3 uninkable. So I guess right offhand, I'd probably take out the Baloos, put in Donald's. Again, I think as far as the lore goes, it's very, very similar, but he's inkable, gets your uninkable count down to 15 instead of 18. The Svens are cute, but I'd probably take those out as well. So what do we got? We got 3 more spots. I'd put a 4th Donald in. We got 2 more. What would I do? Honestly, possibly just put in 2 Plutos then in that spot. So you can hit that kind of like the other deck lines. Like if you hit like Daisy, Piglet, Donald, or Pluto, and then you can come back and heal with Rapunzel or something. Something in that general ballpark. I'd take out the Baloos and the Svens, put in the 4 Donalds for sure, possibly 2 Plutos. I'd have to mess around with the deck a bit more. Lawrence is another tempting one to bump up to 4 to just keep that pressure on. But yeah, overall, I think that it's a pretty solid list. Sven and Baloo, like I said, well, I shouldn't even say Baloo. The uninkable number and Sven are kind of the 2 things I don't like about the deck. Sven's, like I said, it's a cute tech. I just think that there's better utility options. And then that uninkable count's a bit high for my liking. But outside of those 2 things, I think the list is actually really, really strong. All 4 of these lists are really, really strong. If you're looking for anything like that. I do apologize. I just realized that I did not save the links when I made these. I actually and deleted the last one after I was done with it. But card for card, it's right here if you want to go recreate it on Dreamborn. Let me know down below, what other decks do you hope to see? What do you plan on playing? What decks are winning at your events? How are your locals? Is it popsicle heavy? Is it aggro heavy? What is going on in the Lorcana world? Thanks guys for watching, and until next time, take care.